And for the latest on the situation, we're joined by Dr. Anthony Fauci of the National Institutes of Health. He's one of the government's top point people on Ebola. Well, welcome back, Dr. Fauci. The president spoke this afternoon of some new steps to better screen travelers. What kind of things are officials looking at?
Well, the officials are looking now at the possibility of what we call entry screening. Right now, currently, if you're in a West African country and you go to an airport to try and get on a plane to go anywhere, including the United States, you get your temperature taken and you get a questionnaire about how you feel and your possible exposures. What's being considered now is that should there be more on the other end, on the arrival end? Should there be an additional layer of screening? And that's something that's been open for discussion and that is being discussed right now about what the pros and the cons of the added extra effort and investment to do some sort of entry-type screening. That certainly was one of the items on the agenda of the discussion at the White House.
After what happened in Dallas, are you confident or more confident now that protocols are in place at hospitals around the country to detect and respond to any potential new cases?
Yeah, I am, Jeff. I'm fairly certain that that is going to happen. The CDC, for some time now, has been giving out these health alert networks, which are instructions about what you do or what you should do if someone comes in with symptoms compatible with Ebola, that you should ask a travel history and act on it accordingly if you get certain types of information. I think with all the publicity about what went on when there was that misstep in Dallas about losing those 2 days when the person first came to the emergency room, I think any emergency room physician or in a clinic now is very much aware of making sure they ask the right questions.
And what about protecting healthcare workers themselves? Now we have this news out of what appears to have happened in Madrid with a nurse getting Ebola from someone brought there to a hospital, I gather. Are you concerned? Are you more optimistic about the protocols here in this country?
Well, I am. I know that if the protocols are followed carefully, we have an extensive experience from Doctors Without Borders. They follow the protocols. There's rare that they ever get anyone that gets infected. It's unfortunate that the Spanish nurse got infected as part of the care team for the Spanish priest who was taken from West Africa to Spain. But that happens. Sometimes there's a breach in protocol. Hopefully, that would be a very, very rare event.
There's also news out of Dallas with Thomas Eric Duncan, who's being cared for there, that he's now being given an experimental drug. What do you know about that?
Right. The experimental drug that Mr. Duncan is receiving is brincidofovir, which is a type of an analog of a drug called cidofovir, which has been used in another kind of viral infection. It is still in the experimental stage with regard to Ebola, but it has been given in other situations. So hopefully there'll be some activity. We don't know yet because it's still experimental.
But the drug we'd heard about earlier, ZMapp, apparently no more of that. Now we hear about an experimental drug. Is there more in the pipeline? Because of what's going on?
There are several drugs, Jeff, that are in the pipeline. There's the Tecmira drug, which is an inhibitory molecule. There's a drug called BCX4430, which is a molecule and a drug that blocks the building blocks of the genetic makeup of the virus. So there are several that are at the experimental stage. The brincidofovir that Mr. Duncan got was one of those in the experimental stage.
All right, just in our last minute, I want to ask you about something else on the minds of many Americans. That's the enterovirus. It's now confirmed in 43 states, I believe it is, and over 500 cases or so. And now we have the 4-year-old New Jersey preschooler confirmed, the first confirmed death, really, from the virus. And what's interesting is that apparently, he died. He went to sleep without any symptoms and died that night. Now, is that a surprise? What do we know about this?
Well, that's unusual, Jeff. If someone gets a viral illness who feels perfectly well and just dies in their sleep, it can happen. There can be really acute respiratory distress. I don't know the case personally, but I've certainly seen situations where a child could feel reasonably well and get acute respiratory distress and die. The fact that if he died in his sleep, that's a different story, because that could be another mechanism. But getting back to the enterovirus D68, this is a serious situation, as you mentioned correctly. 43 states, close to 500 or over 500 cases, 590, I think it is, the last count. And it can be a serious disease, particularly for children who have a propensity to getting asthmatic symptoms when they get a viral infection. They can go into respiratory distress and really have a problem. And the recent reported deaths, I think, adds to that reality that this is a serious situation.
All right, Dr. Anthony Fauci of NIH. Thanks as always.
Good to be with you.